Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to the participants. Now, before we start, I would like to tell you that for the microphone for presenting, we'll be using this. So it's a clip-on mic, so that it will be easy for you guys to present freely. Yes? Okay. I'm sorry? Masih dia update microphone ni kot. Jauhkan je. Maybe this could be used for the Q&A. So it's pretty simple. Just dekat atas ni, just slide je. And then dia akan lampu beyond view. Auto on. So it's that simple. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to present our breakout chair for session 1, which is Professor Ken Wong. Professor, I will leave it to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Actually, I'm using my husband's account here.
Oh.
This is Dr. Mei Lim. I'm in Adelaide, Australia. So hi to everyone from down under. So today, for this session, we have 7 presentations. So we're going to start with the first one, which is by Associate Professor Jaidi Muhammad Aminuddin and Mr. Lee Yong Hwan. So when you're ready, hello, when you're ready, you can upload your, share your slide, and yeah, then we can start. You have 10 minutes for presentation, and 5 minutes of question time from me, and 5 minutes of question and answer from the audience.
Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Prof. Guy, representing Associate Professor Zaidi. You can make it. I have here my industry partner, Jamsari Abdullah. I also have my Korean colleague, Mr. Lee Yong Hwan. Ang sang sayo again, Mr. Lee. And my mentee, Ahmad Zohairi Zainuddin. Now, for the introduction, the motivation for the research project came around because of the issues of irresponsible garbage disposal, and we were in a very serendipitous part of the world in Perak when the district officer called us up and asked us to do attitudes and how we can proceed into where we can have our international industry partner to have the product on biodegradable plastic bag be part of Perak's strategic plan. Now, as you can see from the last part of the introduction slide, the research project's objectives are twofold. Number one, we have the attitudes on garbage disposal, the irresponsible part and the responsible part, but we chose to do the negative word, which is irresponsible garbage disposal. Now, the next one that our objectives were on the readiness to use biodegradable plastic bags. When we did the literature review, we found that there are many terminologies with regards to biodegradable plastic bags, but for the ones that we have been in Hampiong, where we saw how the products, the plastic bags are produced, this is the true blue biodegradable plastic bag. All right. Now, the background of the study, in essence, we have to catch up with time. So I'd like to go to the last part of the background study where we have the statistics. In 76% of Malaysia's garbage goes to the landfill. And when we were in Perak state, we found that Perak do not have a proper landfill except in the island of Pankor. So you see here, for Malaysia, 38,000 tons, where 24% are being separated or recycled. That is the irresponsible part. Why? Because there's no awareness and there is no change champion. The next part that I'd like to proceed is to show you, all right, the slide says jump a bit. All right, the background of study you see here, our project are so much related to the 17 SDG. In my next slide, I will show you where the pictures that we took. One, we have the garbage thrown on land, and the picture next to it is garbage thrown in the water. It doesn't matter whether it's the rivers or the seas. So you see, this is very, very important indeed, because when we had the major flooding, as you can see from the background of the study here, the main reason for the major floods was because of the irresponsible garbage thrown in the sewage system, so much so it clogged the water system in, especially in Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, and the rest of Malaysia. So as you see here, thank God, our project is so relevant now because of how irresponsible some of the people are with regards to the garbage disposal. Now, garbage disposal, let me clarify the term, is more towards household waste. If I were to go into proper waste, I have to go into e-waste, which we did not. So we are into household wastes. Literature review, as you can see from the current one by Thitu Nguyen, here is you see that the two main foci that we are paying attention to is actually the actual and the ones that we should be doing right now. We should try to find the scope. I'm being a politician. Because there has to be someone who will drive and make sure that somebody throws garbage into a proper place where it should be thrown. I was very, very surprised and ecstatic indeed yesterday when I went through the grounds of the Golden Sands Resort. Their trash is so attractive. They had turtles and lizards and showing people this is where you should throw your trash or garbage or whatever is that needs to be thrown. So you see here, our methodology for the project is mixed method, where the interview was repeatedly done through purposive sampling by going to the top management in the state of Perak. Their concerns, because they want to turn the state into the first one that uses biodegradable plastic bags. In doing so, they will limit all the trash and the toxicity that comes from irresponsible garbage disposal. The rest of the methodology, as you can see here, for the pilot study, we had 118 sample size, and the return responses, as you can see, was quite good, 70%. Now, please, I need to say this. The students were all over Malaysia. So that's very good indeed, because the locality will show me, if I were to do cross-tabulation, that it depends on whether the responses are what we should be seeing, such that you can see that my limitation here says that, you see, the e-survey I had to send to them. I told them not to send to anyone else and be honest with your responses. Now, after this, when we do the actual study where we anticipate to have a huge population size for the state of Perak and Selangor, and that will give us about 10,000, all right, sample size. The next one that I would like to show you is the findings. Have a look. Have you littered in public areas? I was surprised by these responses. I didn't expect university students to be saying yes at 31.9%. All right? That, even at that, although it's quite low compared to the no, because this is just nominal responses. If I don't do nominal, all right, with regards to the first sentence, the students would not be able to respond. If yes, did you litter deliberately? 5.5% said yes. I expected 0. This is deliberate, yeah? Just throwing things out of the car. That is no good. Is it beneficial to the public to litter? Although they said no, but where there is this 3.3% response. You see? So that is where this research is very, very significant, because you need to create the readiness to use biodegradable plastic bag. And number one, you need to gauge the attitude of the respondents. All right? And the last one, are you affected by public littering? Of course, they said yes. So you see, that contradicts with the first four statements. I find this to be very, very interesting indeed when you see all the contradictions. The demographic breakdowns, it is natural to say that because these are university students, there would be 95.6% between the ages of 19 to 39. All right? So you see here, the rest do not apply for now, but we need to look at these numbers for reliability and validity of the instrument. Let's go on to the next one. Readiness to use biodegradable plastic bags. Mr. Lee, this is for you. Do you know that there are plastic bags around, biodegradable ones? They said yes. Amazingly, 14.3% said no. Why? They are university students. They should be aware. They should be reading, in fact. But they said no. Are you ready to use? 4.4% said no. University students said no. So that's significant for me, even at that low percentage. So will the use of plastic bags reduce littering? So it's surprising. They are not concerned with that part, the littering part. Okay, let's go on to the discussions. You see, the first one, I deliberately put it, the mediocre mindset. We have to ingrain in these students that they have to throw trash in a proper manner. I was in Spain, and all the trash from where I rented the apartment, we have to take it down ourselves. They don't have people taking it for us. I was in Tokyo. They don't have a trash can because you have to put your trash in your pocket and throw it responsibly somewhere. So if that kind of mindset can be applied to Malaysia, that would be enormous. All right, enormous change. Okay, now in the essence of time, I would like to go on to the next one, the implications. This research has a huge impact. That is why we are cooperating with Green Bio from South Korea, from Hamgyong, in fact, so that there is this mindset where we can take care of Malaysia's environment, starting with the state of Perak, and from a community in the sub-rural area of Perak. But we started with the students first, because why? Youth can easily influence their parents, can easily influence the community and their younger brothers and sisters. Now, the evidence show that there has to be someone, the change champion, who will drive the use of biodegradable plastic bags. This is a self-funded study. So with South Korea as our partner, we have talked about it, and we hope, yeah, Mr. Jamsari, I know you're here, I'm giving you a shout out, that there will be, inshallah, about 84 million for the next project. And for the marketing part of usage of biodegradable plastic bag, we hope to garner about 2 million in grants and funds for this project. So the next one, as you can see, this, what our findings, it supports that of the biodegradable plastics on the environment. Malaysia is a developing nation. We have to start somewhere. In fact, the agenda on this is part of Malaysia's national agenda. Okay, the budget allocations are there, but are they being used wisely, honestly, transparently? That is also another matter where the political will has to be part of the change champion. Next one, the conclusion. We would like to say that the findings itself shows that Malaysia, especially for our scope here in Perak, needs to have research on attitudes, not just for the youth, but we have to go to the grassroots to find out whether they are throwing garbage and waste in a responsible manner. If you were to go to any of the villages outside, they usually burn, all right, open burning, their garbage and trash. But when you are in the metro area in KL and whatnot, you have to make sure that you separate the plastics from the home food waste and tie them properly and put them in the trash bin or trash can provided. But lately, we saw that the local governments are not giving free trash bins anymore. In fact, the lorries, the trucks that come around to pick up the garbage are not as regular as it's supposed to be. That's why those are very important issues that this research will tackle in later parts. Now, the awareness part, that is, like I said,
We have 1 minute.
thank you, surprising because of the awareness. It really doesn't make sense to me that university students are not aware of the biodegradable plastic. All right, I think I have to conclude fast to make way for other presenters. We would like to acknowledge all of these people. You see here that's the motivation part of the research. We have the chieftains and the district officer, and also to Mr. Shin and Mr. Lee for bringing us over to Hampyeong, South Korea in 2020 to have a look at the machinery, which we hope will be brought into Perak. And authors also have no financial support at all, but we would like to acknowledge our university. And with that, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I have some questions for you.
Thank you.
Before we look at the questions, I absolutely enjoy your presentation.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Because you know what? I love rubbish. Because I did my PhD in solid waste management, and I looked at that. I'm originally from Malaysia. I'm from Kuching.
Oh,
so you
Sarawak.
can imagine the situation is in Kuching. It's similar. It's similar to what you have just mentioned about the situation in Perak. Yeah. So thank you so much. Now you mentioned about no awareness in the
society. We can start. You talked about educating the students. What about have you thought of like educating them since they're little, like since primary school? Because in Australia, I can use it as an example. We started very young here.
Okay, that is an extraordinarily good idea. You see, with the younger set, when we tried to go into the education part, we had one huge carnival with the Perak State. We had the Faculty of Education lecturers come down, even to try to create awareness on STEM. That is another agenda by the federal government. And this is part of it. Throwing garbage properly, because when we gave them, say, a popsicle, the wrappers, where did they throw it? But it has to be something that is continuous. I think that we will proceed with that as well. Go catch the little ones and culture them so that they are the ones who will tell their parents, please throw the garbage responsibly.
Exactly, because when I spoke to people, community in Kuching, I'm talking about 15 years ago. Guess what people say to me, May, there is no use because in 30 years time, people will still behave the same. I say, to me, no, that is wrong because you need to start educate them since young. I'm actually, I thought in Miri in Sarawak, they started using the green bag, I think, if I'm not wrong. I'm not sure whether it's biodegradable plastic bag. No.
No, we tested that. We tested that, Madam Professor. Encik Jamsari, would you like to respond to that? Because he was the one who did it with several bags that he got. And many of them, after 2 weeks, did not degrade as they were supposed to. Mr. Jam?
Hi everybody.
Hello.
Thank you very much for give opportunity to respond on this question. Yeah, first of all, I agreed. When we start to educate, we start from the from the youngest, especially on the kindergarten stage. So to respond on the biodegradable plastic bag using by the state of Kuching, especially, I have a friend in Kuching. So normally they use this plastic bag there is a two different of the biodegradable bags. One is the biodegradable bags, it's non-biodegradable bags. So the other one is we call it like OXO plus biodegradable bags and biodegradable bags. Two different situation of it means like degrading. So for example, our product is started degrade on 90 days and finished at 180 days. So the other one maybe take longer. But the problem is there is a plastic bag, I mean the biodegradable bag mixed with its plastic. So it's going to be a what we call it it's going to be a microplastic. So that is very dangerous actually for our health. So this is the situation that happened in Malaysia, especially around states, especially on Perak. So I think the plastic bag as used now in Malaysia is not fully biodegradable. It's mixed with the polymer based on petroleum base.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Madam Person, can we get Mr.
Yeah,
Lee?
anyone has any question? We open to questions from the audience. If not, I have another one. It's not really a question. It's just about sorting the waste, like what we do in Australia. Is there any question from the audience?
No, they don't have any questions. They're nice.
So I have then, because in Australia we have 3 bins. So we have one green bin, so where we put our garden waste, even food waste go in there, and then we have the yellow bin, which is where all the recyclable like cardboard and everything will go in there, and then we have our blue bin. That's when you put all the garbage out. You know, the non-recyclable.
Yeah.
I proposed when I was in Kuching. Again, this was over 10 years ago. Of course, it was a no. yeah. I think it's very much come down to apart from no awareness, but there is a reluctance in people, like they're not ready to accept you know, the new way of, you know, they need to start learning about reducing waste. This is a very, very important topic and issue. I don't go home very often. I haven't been home see my family for 2 years, but every time I go back to Kuching, I see how much like waste, rubbish, you know, and how people still use a plastic bag is everywhere. It hurts. When I see that, it hurts. It's a very, very important, it's significant, the issue. So thank you very much for...
Madam Chairperson, there's someone here in the audience who wants to ask a question, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay. Actually, the topic is very, very relevant and very, very important because the attitude will ensure the result, for example. But it doesn't matter whether it's a biodegradable plastic bag or not, right? But now I want to see this topic because your group interested on the biodegradable plastic bag, the usage of the plastic bag, and then the touch on the attitude. So does the attitude is become the main agenda, or whether the biodegradable plastic bags? All right. So I think I just want to know because I don't want to give any comments on that, but I want to know your biasness in the research. Which is your priority? Okay? Thank you.
So, Mr. Lee, can you talk about the biodegradable plastic bag in Seoul, Korea?
Yeah, I think we have plastic bag here. Normally in Korea it's using the bioplastic, but now can using the suburb emAs. Any using the biodegradable plastic bag because now it's in Korea
I'll respond to the attitudes. One time, the state of Selangor banned any form of styrofoam as well as the use of plastic straw. Did it work? No, it came back. You see, for many biodegradable products, they are not as strong as plastic products. For example, we have cups one time for hot coffee. You have to put at least 2 or 3. Otherwise, the heat from the coffee will degrade the cup. So as far as attitudes concerned, for this research, we have to look at from a two-prong of the project itself, because from attitudes we have awareness. And also we want to relate to how and where and what, when they are ready to use it. So under the umbrella of attitude, we have all of this, awareness as well as usage and readiness.
Thank you so much for that. We well over time, but what an interesting paper, and thank you for your presentation. I must talk to you more about that if I have the opportunity. Yeah, because attitude actually came out from my research as well as one of the findings. There is pride in people. We shall talk more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Mr. Jam.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And yeah, now we have the next presentation, the next paper. It's by Mr. Muhammad Itham Muhammad Yusuf. When you're ready.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning fellow friends from all around the world. My name is Muhammad Idham Muhammad Yusuf, together with my supervisor, Associate Professor Dr. Marina Arifin from Universiti Putra Malaysia and Dr. Dwi Harsono from Universiti Yogyakarta. I'm going to present a paper entitled Stakeholders Engagement in Implementation of Youth-Led SDG-Related Programs in Malaysia. In the implementations of sustainable development goals, particularly at the country level, it is very important for collaboration and engagement among SDG stakeholders across level within the context of whole of society and whole of nation approach. At the country level, it's very important for us to engage our SDG stakeholders because it's going to is part of the prerequisites toward the success of SDG implementation at all levels itself. Therefore, the government should assimilate and engage various stakeholders, including the youth, into the national development strategies and also at the state levels and also at the local levels. At the same time, by engaging the SDG stakeholders is also providing us with sustainable choices and solutions. Previous literature has explained and discussed on multi-stakeholders' roles and positions in the implementations of SDG. In fact, during the LA21 Local Agenda 21 implementations on sustainability and also MDG Millennium Development Goals, stakeholders are also being engaged and being proposed to be included in its implementations. However, it is not comprehensive and extensive and not supporting the inclusiveness because certain categories of stakeholders are not being included, especially local governments and youth especially. So this study has identified that it is very important for us to include as inclusive and as extensive the categories of SDG stakeholders into our SDG implementation at the country levels, at the multi-tier governmental levels, and recursive process of sustainability. This is because a few scholars has explained and agreed that for the whole system to be declared as sustainable, then it should be the sustainability effort should happens and occur at the subsystems of the government as well. Therefore, the primary aim of the study is to ascertain and to identify different kinds of SDG stakeholders groups that being involved in the youth-driven and youth-led SDG programs, which act as part of the partner of the youth movements in SDG projects and programs in Malaysia. This is qualitative study where I interviewed youth leaders from the NGOs, from the young movements, youth movements in Malaysia. This is because of the current literature in Malaysia. There are very limited studies conducted on the youth engagements and youth involvement in SDG implementations in Malaysia. Therefore, I'm interviewing youth leaders and youth activists who involved directly with the SDG projects and programs in Malaysia. So I'm using in-depth interview, face-to-face and online interview during the pandemic period of time, and then the data being analyzed using NVivo through coding, categorizing, and thematizing. So the result in discussions, it was identified that the youth engagement with other stakeholders in their SDG-related programs implementations happen at the international level, national level, that's at the federal government level, the state government level, and also the local level. For the SDG stakeholder engagement with the youth movement at the international levels, the youth movement in Malaysia has engaged with various United Nations bodies and agencies such as United Nations country teams and other regional bodies in their activities and projects and programs. They also engage and partners with global universities, embassies, and also international NGOs. However, the broader engagement with the international stakeholders depending on the nature of the youth movement itself, especially if the youth movements are being established or having a partners at the international levels. For example, Malaysian Scouts and few others NGOs, youth NGOs in Malaysia who are being established as the country chapters, then they will have more exposure and more engagement with the international SDG stakeholders. And from the projects and programs, when they engage with the international stakeholders, the youth movements projects, mostly in terms of volunteerism, which are being aligned with the SDGs, with all SDGs. And this is very important because they are going to nurture the advocacy and leaderships, SDG leaderships, and SDG as the SDG ambassador at the national and regional level. At the country level, the youth movement has been engaged with the government institutions and private organizations. However, the most partners or the most frequent partners in youth-led SDG projects and programs are with the university and school institutions. This is because most these NGOs believe that it's very important for them to advocate the SDGs and also issues with SDGs and to expose these SDG issues, especially on environmental issues, to the university students and also to the school students. So this, however, it depends on the magnitude and the degree of activeness of these NGOs, youth movements in engaging with the schools and also the government institution. There are also different engagement between the youth movements registered with the ROI, Registrar of Youth, and also ROS, Registrar of Society. For the youth movements registered with ROI and affiliated with the Ministry of Youth and Sports at the federal and also state youth council, even though they are being given with a huge fundings, however, SDG was not being part of their main youth movements ideology or activities compared to other youth movement being registered by the ROS, where they are affiliated with the more notable and more distinguished NGOs at the international level who are extending the SDGs into Malaysian context. And also they are also collaborate with the public universe, with the other NGOs, and also only few youth movements collaborate and engage with the politicians and also with the legislative members. This indicating that it's very important for us to engage with the members of parliaments and also with legislators because SDGs need political will, and within the context of Malaysia, we have APPGM, all parliamentary groups in implementing and localizing the SDGs. Therefore, it's very important for the youth movement to engage with the politician as well to make sure that the SDG could be implemented at the grassroots. And the third level of SDG stakeholders engagement, this youth movement has frequently engaged with the local community, and most of the activities are focusing at the schools and the local community in improving the SDG related to environmental goals. However, there are very limited engagement with the local government and other institutions. This is because the local governments in Malaysia, some of them are being open in engaging the youth NGOs into the SDG localizations and SDG projects initiated by the youth. However, these informants also responding that there are also few local government who prefer to work in silo and do not prefer to engage with the youth generation and younger generation in their sustainability efforts. So this is something that need to be reviewed and looked into. The key points from this research, number one, is in Malaysia, our SDG stakeholder engagement occurs at the different subsystems. When it comes into youth engagement projects, when it comes into youth-led SDG projects and programs implementations, yes, there is SDG stakeholder engagement between these stakeholders with the youth movements. However, it depends on the nature of the youth movements. There must be a transformation and reformation being done at the youth institutions, youth movement itself, for them to for us to make aware SDG to this youth movement, because most of the youth movement registered by the ROY, they are not being exposed to SDG compared to other youth movement registered in ROS. This is because SDG is not being part of the policy or blueprint at Ministry of Youth. So there's no top down instruction to make that to make sure that their projects and programs are being aligned with the SDGs. Number two, youth organization inadequately exposed to SDG goals and activities. So it depends on the activeness of the youth leadership. So if the youth leadership are being exposed to the SDG from their communications with other friends from other countries, from their experiences of attending conferences and summits and being invited as a speaker, so they are being exposed to SDG, so they're going to transfer the ideology of SDG into the youth movements. Therefore, it's very important for us to expose SDG to the youth organization, because they are the one who are going to carry out the projects and programs at the grassroots. Number three, youth organization partnerships and interactions is very important with other stakeholders, because youth movements, they might have a limitations in terms of financial and also experts. Therefore, by partnering with other SDG stakeholders, it is very important for them to create a sustainable projects and programs. All right, Prof. And it's very important also to for the youth to engage with other stakeholders, because they're going to have knowledge in terms of SDG, they're going to have fundings, and there will be expertise, so they will create this themselves as a community of practice. So recommendation from this studies, number one is the government need to accommodate and include youth and other stakeholders into the governance of the SDG in Malaysia, because only selected and limited youth representatives are being included into the government SDG governance mechanism. We are also need more relevant models in governing our youth in engaging into the SDG, because at the state levels and local levels, it can be seen that the youth are not being included extensively into the SDG governance mechanisms. We need more youth to lead SDG projects and programs at the grassroots, not only at the schools and university, but also at the local levels and local community. And we believe that this finding will aid more studies into the sustainable developments, and will contribute and nurture more youth development within the context of SDGs. So we would like to express our gratitude to the anonymous research participants who volunteered to be part of this research, and their informations are very valuable to conclude this paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Again, that's a very interesting research topic there. I have a quick question for you about the stakeholder. Because you did a qualitative study.
Yes.
And maybe I missed it. Did you may I ask how many participants did you actually?
25 participants representing the youth movements. I'm interviewing youth leaders representing the youth NGOs and youth movement, and also youth activists. They're focusing on SDG activities.
Okay, so 25 in total.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. There was the responses. One of the responses where it says from the local community about they mentioned about activities with school. Can you please just elaborate what sort of activities did they actually refer to?
All right. The similarity of the all youth organizations that interviewed, they are focusing on SDG on educations, SDG on health, and also SDG on environmental protection. That is SDG 13 and 15. So mostly when it comes into schools advocacy, most of these youth movements and youth activists, they are focusing on reducing the use of plastics. So one of the informants, for instance, are able to change the sustainable behavior of the students at the primary and secondary school, and also able to nurture the green policy at the school by promoting the use of metal straw. So that school has imposed, the use of metal straw. So no more using a plastic straw and also polystyrene. So that school also has started the green policy by focusing on 3R, where students are required to bring the recycle and waste into the schools, and it generate the income also to the school at the same time. And the school has begun to start the green policy, reducing the usage of water and also electricity.
Do we know when did they? How long has have this school been doing that? Like when did they first introduce?
All right. The SDG ambassador or activist has started that as part of her role as the SDG ambassador, because she affiliated with one of the UN NGO, and also she was appointed as one of the SDG ambassador and SDG activists in Malaysia. So she always do it during school. It has been like 3 years that she has been
Okay.
appointed as the ambassador, and she targeted into the secondary school and primary schools at the southern part of Malaysia.
Thank you very much for that. So it's fairly new.
Yeah.
But it's so good to know and to see that works that have been
Yeah.
taken and yeah.
Yeah. However, it's only that kind of environmental NGO that led by the youth who extensively do the environmental led SDG projects and programs compared to other NGOs. The other NGOs focusing more into the educations and also to other no poverty SDGs and others. So there are still limited NGOs in Malaysia, especially led by youth, in advocating the environment related of SDG.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's good. It's really good to know that some works have started. They have actually starting doing that, looking at that. So that's all from me. Now I'm going to open to questions from the audience. Do we have any questions? Any question from anyone? If there's no question from I can't see. I don't.
Not at the moment.
Hey, no questions? No question there. May I ask about, more about what they, I would like to know more about what they actually do to educate this young generation.
All right. It depends on the youth movement. For a certain youth movement, they are focusing on the place-based, project-based, and hands-on projects and programs. So that one would tackle more interest among the younger generations. So they encounter that rather than giving speech, talks, and so they are using this technology and project-based programs for them to advocate the SDG. So it has been able to attract the attentions of the younger population, especially at the schools. And they're also using video materials, audio materials in showing to the audience what are implications of the climate change, the implications of using more plastics and others to the turtles, to the life of below water and others. So it has changed the mindset of the younger generation of use to change the usage of plastic to the metal straw, because they can see that in future that it is their responsibility as the younger generation to change into the sustainable behavior. At the same time, they are also these former students that as the participant, they are able also to start their own sustainable businesses, sustainable fashions and others. So it has impacted to the target audience as well.
That's why it's very important to start young.
Yeah. Prof, we have one question from the audience here.
Yeah, good.
All right. All right. All right. I'm using a purposive sampling techniques in which using a snowballing as well, by attending SDG conferences, SDG summits, by which these youth are becoming the speakers and also participants. So from that, I know that whether their NGOs are focusing on these SDGs or not. At the same time, I'm also interviewing the youth council at the country level, at the federal, and also at the state level and district levels to know whether they are focusing on SDGs or not. The idea is, yes, they know that some of them know about SDGs, some of them mapping on SDGs, some of them are not. However, However, from my study that I encountered that most of the youth movements that registered under ROS, because they affiliated with the international bodies, International Youth Association, they are more advocate on SDGs and they're more excellent with the SDGs compared to those registered with the Registrar of Youth. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other questions from the audience? No other questions?
No, no problem.
No, there's no.
No, no.
Okay, all right. Thank you so very
Alright.
much for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have Dr. Radun Yusuf for presentation number 3. And when you're ready, I can't see the screen for some reason. It's turned black.
Madam Chairperson, Dr. Mei Lim, and fellow presenters. Today I'm going to present my SRR paper entitled Review on the Southeast Asian Sustainable Development Goal SDG Localization Strategies. Right. Before that, I would like to acknowledge the faculty to provide the grant for us to do this research, and this is actually the first paper that we come out with for the grant. And thank you to AMER for organizing this conference. Right. Right. So before I start, I would like to give some background of the SDG. When it started in 2015, when the Millennium Development Goal in 2000 ended at 2015, right? And most report, a general report of the MDG said that the program done by the MDG was very successful, especially in the sub-Saharan countries, African countries, and the Asian Pacific countries. But the only problem is having program, implemented program produced by the United Nations. When the master left, for example, when the program ended, the program in the countries also end, right? Because it is not sustained, right? Another problem is because of the localization. When programs are implemented by the United Nations, when they leave, the program also end because it was not localized. It was not promoted to the local government, right? So that is why SDG was introduced in a way to come out with a plan, a program that can be implemented in countries through a whole of nation and the whole of societies, right? To include the lowest government as possible, agencies and bodies, so that they can support the SDG programs implementation. Right. This is also known as the localization process or the SDG mainstreaming. Right. And because of that, since it's quite new, 2016 started. So and a lot of interesting what we call development has happened, and papers are authors are writing about these SDG and so on and so forth. So this research, basically this paper is interested to do systematic literature review on what are the information written by by all the authors all around the world, and our objective is to do an SLR to discover the SDG localization strategies adopted in Southeast Asian countries. Right. So for the research methodology for the SLR, we use ROSES as suggested by Hathaway in 2008, which require for us to first come up with the research problem, and the research problem we use. Okay. I think the system wants to go for lunch. Right. All right. So as I mentioned, it's started as suggested by Hathaway using ROSES. ROSES start with developing the research question, and for that we use PICO, right, with the small o. And for the database, for this research, we use Scopus only, right? Actually, what we want to do, this is a 3-part research. We want to compare Scopus, Scopus WoS, and Scopus, and also the Gray publication, the Google Scholar. So our first part is actually looking at the Scopus only, right? And we use the Boolean operators, and we have downloaded 287 papers in the Scopus, and we screen, and and we screen all the papers, and we have a total of 75 papers that need to be screened, another one for their edit title and abstract, right? And we excluded 24, and we end up with 41 papers, and then we send it to the expert. We reviewed, we read the full text, and at the end, we the final output is 17 papers. That is exactly talking about localization policies in the Southeast Asia. Right, and these 17 papers then we will send to the expert. There are 2 experts on UPM for them to grade the article, and they decided that all 17 papers are at good quality, moderate and good quality. So we use all the 17 papers, and to do the analysis, we use the thematic analysis to look at the main theme and also the sub-theme of all the articles written on these localization policies. Right. So, interestingly, there are 3 main themes that we found out in all the 17 papers. And the papers come from 4 countries actually, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and also Indonesia. And 3 main themes that we have found out is most of the papers talk about green initiative and policy measures, stakeholder partnership, and participatory mechanism. Right. So perhaps may I discuss in each of the in each of the theme, there are sub-theme. For example, under the Green Initiative, countries like in Thailand discuss on their policies. In Thailand, they have the sufficiency economics policy, and the focus on the sub-themes are more on green product procurement, food waste management, and sustainable event management. So interesting, because they require changes not only in the economic, social, and political context, but it also requires changes in the cultural context. For example, they introduced the sustainable songkran, right? A songkran that uses less water, which is very, what we call, contradicting to the idea that most Thailand people have. Right, so to that extent, that to support SDG, countries are required to do major, what we call, changes in the country. Right, and in Malaysia we have eco purchasing, environmental friendly product. Indonesia talks about drainage and sanitation. Right, and all this is to support nature, green society, and also to promote sustainable behavior. Right. So in most SDG, in most paper, when they talk about SDG, they talk about usually on green initiative, on the or in the environment level. Right, and the sorry, 2 minutes. All right, okay. Okay, sure, no problem. All right, and then the second one is stakeholder partnership, which they say in order, this is very crucial in SDG implementation. It requires commitment by all level of the government, and there will be a trinity of collaboration between the government, the what you call the private parties, entities, and also the community. Right, in order for localizations to happen, and there will be another what you call Trinity plus one. I call it Trinity plus one, where it requires the influential figures to help to promote localization strategies in the world, especially, right? Because each of these parties will have different roles right? For example, government should they should, let's say, initiate, they should plan, I say, whereas when actually doing the program should be done by the community, right? For SDG to happen, right, the government cannot implement it. So what they do is they only provide awareness and also monitoring, but the implementation process should be done at the local level. Right, and the third one is what we call as participatory mechanism, and it discusses all the what's the impediment and the success of participatory mechanism, which require which in all the 17 papers says that this is the most important aspect in SDG implementation. Everyone must participate. If there's no participation, then SDG would not happen. Right. Okay. So these are some of the recommendations that what can the countries do to support SDG. Like, for example, strengthening the role of institution, providing community development program, improving the community capacity to help themselves, right? So that they can provide project that attune to their needs without hindering or without jeopardizing the needs of the future, so that the programs can be sustained, right? Going to discussion, as I have mentioned, that most paper discuss on the environmental element, SDG 12, 13, and 16. For example, water, land, land on sea, land below the seas, and also responsible consumption, and also on sustainable cities and communities and partnership. Right? So SDG 17, one of the focus that most papers have, but I cannot generalize because because of the 70 papers, we able to assess only 4 countries. So I cannot generalize the whole we cannot generalize the whole Southeast Asia, right? And so that's the finding, because of the 3 things, the 3 main themes and the sub themes of the SDG implementation in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia. Right. So, in conclusion, I think because of the finding, we are required to do more research on SDG. That's why in our in third step, we are going to compare more paper, right, especially from the WoS, and also I think we are required to look at the Google Scholar as well. Right, a lot of gray areas publication. Right, good publication, but it is not accepted because it is not Scopus or WoS. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I think that's all my presentation.
Thank you so much. Well done with the time. I love the fact that you actually use thematic analysis, because that's what I'm very, very one of the what I use. That's exactly what I used many years ago when I do my PhD. So if there is any opportunity, I would love to see, your theme, like did you have mind maps or diagrams for your themes and categories?
I have, but I did not bring it here.
No, yeah, I don't expect you to have have it here.
When we sit together, we come up with mind maps. We use because we don't use any apps, so we put paper. It won't put on papers and pen. So just do a mind map together with my team.
Yeah, you'll be interesting to see how some of the mind maps that you've created.
Sure. I'll try to publish it.
Now, I don't have any particular questions here, and now I'll open this to the audience. If anyone has any questions.
All right, sure. But I think they don't have because everyone is hungry.
Yeah, we. What is the time now in Malaysia? It's currently nearly 3 p.m. my time in Australia.
12:30.
Oh, 12:30. We better. So if there's no question, can we move on to the next presenter?
That's one question. Thank you.
There's one. Yeah.
Because South Asia inclusive of a few other countries, right? So I don't know why in particular, if is there any particular reason you omit Singapore? Because you did, in your introduction you don't express why you choose only 3 countries and why not, because you already maybe expecting certain result or whatever. I need explanation.
Right. Because the question is, why do we omit certain countries like Singapore? Actually, we don't choose to do that. It was when we use the ROSES process, looking at the screening, eligibility, and so on and so forth. No research or no paper that published on Scopus actually talks about localization strategy in Singapore. We couldn't find any papers, right? One of the reasons because in Singapore, it's everything planned by the government. There's no such thing as localization, I think, right? But I need to read further. There is no concept of localization. Everything is planned by the government. For SDG, we cannot consider it's SDG if it's planned by the government. It must be done by the local people. Sebab tu tak ada, Prof. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any other questions from the audience? If there's no question, we can thank you very much for presenting your research to us. Can we move on to the next paper? Welcome back. So next we have Mr. Muhammad Muhammad Yusuf. When you're ready.
Right, hi everyone, I come back again for my second paper together with my other colleague, Dr. Tuan Nuriani, Dr. Farah Adila, and Dr. Dwi Harsono. The second paper entitled Youth and Their Knowledge on the Sustainable Development Goals. As mentioned earlier, youth is very important in terms of implementation of SDGs, not only at the global level, country, locals, and other institutions as well, because youth has been included as part of the major groups and other stakeholders, MGOs, under the categories of stakeholders as mentioned by the United Nations. Therefore, youth inclusivity in various governance implementations of SDGs is very important, so that their significant roles and meaningful roles could be included as part of the implementation, and their voice could be heard at these various institutions. The Malaysian journey on sustainable development has begun in 1970s with the implementation and introductions of the new economic policy to improvise the economics of the Malay society and improvise the economy of the country as well. And implicitly, we includes and we embedded our sustainable development principles and concepts into our development plans, in our Malaysia plans, and focusing on SDG, it is implicitly being embedded in our RMK or Malaysia Plan, 11 Malaysian Plan, 12 Malaysian Plan, and also the Shared Prosperity Visions 2030. Compared to other countries in the region, such as in Thailand and also in Indonesia, they have a very specific legislations or policy in terms of SDG implementation. It is being legislated as part of the policy and law. However, in Malaysia, we don't have that particular specific law and legislation. However, SDG was being embedded implicitly in the 5 years development plans, and it was aimed to achieve the SDGs at the same time. And in terms of monitoring and reviewing our progress, Malaysia has produced 2 voluntary national review being presented at the high level of political forum at the United Nations, that is in 2017 and also in 2021. And apart from Malaysia, if we are looking at the regions, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia is the most frequent countries in the regions who frequently reported their SDG progressions to the United Nations. And the current progress of SDG in Malaysia is the voluntary local review at the local level, where Shah Alam City Council and Subang Jaya City Council is the maiden and leading local government in reporting their SDG localization progress and reports in Malaysia to the United Nations. Based on the UI Green metric, UITM specifically is ranking number 9 among the public and private university in Malaysia when it comes into sustainability efforts. And globally, UITM Shah Alam has been put at the rank of 9050. This shows that UITM is at the right track towards promoting and becoming of sustainable campus through a various approach of green approach and also sustainable approach. We also have introduced Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainable Development and Green UiTM centers, which has become as a center for sustainability efforts, initiatives, and also green initiatives. This is very important because we can start our sustainable behaviors and sustainable practices among the younger generation beginning at the university. So this aim of the study is to analyze the youth understanding of the SDGs, identify their SDG priorities, to assess their youth SDG knowledge sources, and to assess the impact of the SDGs to this youth. So this is quantitative study. So my respondents are UiTM students aged at 18 to 30 years old as mandated by the Malaysian Youth Law. So I able to manage to get 223 respondents from the online survey, and we have 6 sections of the questions within the Likert skill surveys, and we analyze it using the SPSS through the descriptive statistical analysis. So based on the Cronbach alpha value, it is almost near to 1, so it is reliable to be tested furthermore. And most of the respondents are female, 70% are female, and they are within the age range of 21 to 25 years old. Based on the first, for the first objective, youth understanding of the SDGs, this study has identified that our respondents has a very low knowledge on the basic principle of SDG selves. So they are not familiar with the principles of SDG, the objective SDGs, indicators and targets of the SDGs, and even they are not aware on the originations and the history of SDG selves. However, they have a very moderate knowledge on what is meant by sustainable development and sustainability, meaning to say that they know about the concept of inclusivity. They're aware that they are the one who are going to pioneer the SDG implementation in Malaysia as the younger generation. They are aware that SDG is about their daily life issues, and it's very important for us to have this as a comprehensive plans. So it's very important for us to know that they have to understand about SDG also, apart from concept of sustainability, because SDG comprised of 17 goals, and the 17 goals going to affect their life in the future and the decisions of the current generations and for the future generation as well. So it's very important for them to understand on the SDGs apart the basic concept of sustainable development itself. Based on the second objective on the youth SDG priority, the top 3 most important SDG from these respondents are SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation, SDG 4 on quality education, and SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy. For SDG 4 on quality education, literature has shown that this is the most popular SDG preferences by the younger generation education. The same studies conducted in Vietnam also shows that the younger generation more prefer on quality education. However, this study has identified that they choose SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation and clean energy. So it's going to be a good start for them, for the younger generation, to be aware on the need of on clean energy, on the climate change issues and others. However, on the top 3 least important SDG is life below water, climate action, and gender equality. Even though majority of the respondents are female, they consider gender equality is not important. So maybe the situation in Malaysia, the female respondents or the females think that they have equal rights. So maybe SDG 5 on gender equality is not important for this younger generation. However, in Vietnam, they consider that as very important. So we have to look into these SDG preferences, because SDG is not about environmental aspects. However, it's also about economics, about social, cultures, and others as well. So these are the situation from this study. And from the sources of youth SDG knowledge, most of the knowledge being on SDG be acquired through education system. That is through the university institution, because most of the subjects might be aligned or mapped with the SDGs. And surprisingly also, they are considered, surprisingly, they are also acquire SDG knowledge from the mass media, traditional sources of knowledge from radio, televisions, and other advertisement and social media. For social media, the 3 most frequent and popular sources of SDG knowledge are YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So I believe that SDG stakeholders should capitalize this by using YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram to promote SDG to the younger generation. So the government have to use this material. So it's considered that maybe the younger generation do not use Facebook frequently. They are using more YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram rather than Facebook. While most of our generation more prefer to use Facebook. So the right channel to promote SDG is also very important to the younger generation. The fourth objective.
You have 2 minutes to go.
Correct. The impact of the youth SDG exposure clearly it increased their knowledge on sustainability. And also they are able to be part of to initiate SDG related projects at the university. However, the numbers of frequency is not that high, mean to say that we need to explore more on the impacts of SDG knowledge to the younger generation, because it's very important for us to give knowledge on SDG, because it's going to change the attitudes and practice to sustainable behavior, rather than we just ask them to do projects and progress without knowing what this SDG is all about. So the findings of this study has revealed that UiTM, Malaysia youth and students have a moderate SDG knowledge, especially on the fundamental concepts. We need to explore, we need to expose our students on the targets, indicators, SDGs indicators and targets, and to try to link the current issues of SDG into the classes on and outside classes activities, because it's going to have a meaningful engagement and meaningful participation with our students. Number two, we need to use together with traditional mass media and social mass media, because it's going to be capitalized. It's going to be good methods and medium for us to promote the SDG. Number three, we need to focus on education for sustainable development, ESD, not only at the university level, but also at the school level and also kindergarten level, because we need to nurture the knowledge of SDG from the younger age. As mentioned by the previous speaker, in a certain country also, example in Japan and Korea, and even in Egypt, they already started come out with SDG comics, SDG cartoons, just to promote SDG to the younger generation. So SDG must be part of our culture and part of our daily life practices. And we need to expose SDG because it's going to increase the respondents' comprehension as well. So for the recommendation, we believe that all SDGs should be tackled, not only on environment, but the importance of environment, because the finding from the study identified that the environmental related SDGs is not the most preferred one. So I think, and in the era of climate change and others, we need to promote more environmental related SDG into our students at the university, and we have to choose the right social media and educate using the concept of education for sustainable development. And this is part of, this research is being funded by UiTM and FSPPP as part of the research grant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done there with the time.
Thank you.
I do love your the slides, your presentation slides. I do love I like the diagrams, and yeah, I can see that you must have spent a lot of time preparing this, putting everything together. You mentioned about in and outside classroom activity earlier.
Yes.
Can you elaborate that a little bit more?
All right. In Malaysia or UiTM, for example, the curriculum review in UiTM, for instance, last time we conducted in 2017, in 2018, we required to map our courses, learning objective and others with the SDG achievement as well. So the resource person need to come out with a criteria or a suitable assessment to assess the students with the activities. So when it comes into in-class or outside the classroom activities that can be mapped with the SDG achievement, the theoretical part and exposure can be taught in the classes. However, to make things more interesting and to have a substantive or meaningful engagement with the outsiders, we bring the students to conduct projects, SDG project outside the classes. So it's very important so that they're going to apply the theory to the outside real issues, mapping it with the local issues so that they can come up with the sustainable solutions. And also that sustainable solution will bring advantage to the community as well. So we try to bring the theoretical concept in classes to the projects and also hands-on activities. For instance, one subject is sustainable development, introduction to sustainable development. In UiTM Seremban, we collaborate with the Majlis Bandaraya Seremban, Seremban City Council. So we do community projects helping the local government, because local government might have a lack of capacity in come out and producing sustainability projects. So everything is led by the students through the courses that they learn in classes, so they can see the real issues and how they can come up with the sustainable solution to bring a sustainable changes to the sustainable community.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's very interesting. When they work with the local council, for example, when they present, may I know what do you use? Like, what do they produce? Like the materials they produce. Like, do they use PowerPoint or other form of presentation?
The students are required to conduct a project, a community project.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so students are not required to present. The presentation, so the presentation will be in front of the lecturers or the resource person or the academician in the classes after the project being conducted. However, all the discussion with the local government or local council, it should be initiated by the student themselves.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. The reason I ask is because these days, animated explainer videos
Yes, yes,
it is very popular, and
yes,
it's
exactly.
in trend. So that was the reason why I asked.
So that's why from the finding, we need to strengthen and intensifying our education for sustainable development concept in our university, ESD, not only to teaching about theoretical concept of SDG, but how to materialize the SDG into by using a different materials of audio, visual, and also illustration as well, so that our younger generation would be more interesting on it, because SDG might be considered as a very heavy topic for them.
Absolutely. And this is the reason why I create animated explainer videos, and I'm an senior accounting lecturer. You can imagine how boring accounting is. It is dry. So that's what I do to just attract their attention and to generate interest in the
Yes,
topic.
exactly.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the these two questions in the audience. Do we have any questions?
We have one question.
Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, I found it very disappointing that students would put climate action as one of the top
Least preferred. Yes, yes.
That's really surprising.
Yes.
As a comment, I think for a lot of students, SDG to them is like, oh, that's United Nations agenda. They don't see the reality of it. They think at 2030 it's going to end and that's it. But I think we need to emphasize the fact that it's about us surviving, about the world surviving. Yes, after 2030 we have to continue with SDG. And maybe we need to have real case studies. Let them see, for example, I don't know, floods. We've had massive floods in Malaysia, especially in Selangor. Capital city of Kuala Lumpur, and yet we have floods. It rains for 2 or 3 hours and then we have massive flash floods. So if we can do a real case study and see how that impacts lives, people have just fixed their car just a few months ago, and the car is now again damaged. People have lost their jobs, and so therefore it goes beyond than just SDG 13 climate action, but people losing lives, losing livelihoods, and so on and so forth. I think we have to work so that it's real people, real case studies, real impact. It's not just on paper and theory.
Yes, I have to agree with you. Number one, why climate change was the least preferred? I think because lack of exposure on the dangers or the implication of the climate change except to the respondents, because the respondents are students. So I believe that they have a very little or limited connections with the issues of climate actions, being exposure being in the classes or by the university, and also lack of networking with the other with the outside organization as well. That's why I believe that the most important thing for these students, for the university students, for them to create the networking and link their activities, a student society, or even the student representative at the university have to start to create the networking with the United Nations agencies. We have United Nations country team, we have NGOs, youth NGOs who advance advocating about SDGs. So we have to call them into the university and collaborate with the real projects. Because from my interview, my previous study is about interviewing the youth movement NGOs. So some of them also are the university students. So they are advocating about SDGs. Some of them even being called and invited by the Minister of Water and Environment to sit in the decision making and policy making related to environment. However, when it comes into the university level, they are not being included in as part of the community or committee of the green policy. So I think we need to create that freedom also and accessibility for our students to be part of the decision makers in terms of real issues that is happening nowadays in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the response.
All right.
I
Thank you.
totally agree with you on that one. They need to
Alright.
be included instead
Yes.
of Okay. Is there any more questions? I understand that it's lunchtime, so if there is no questions, thank you so much. We'll move on to the next presenter. We have the next paper, and our next presenter is Miss Noziana Ahil. It's Ali. I'm so sorry. When you're ready.
Assalamualaikum and a good afternoon to the chairman and also to all the audience. So here I'm Nurziana binti Ahli as a presenter, and I also represent technologist geospecialist Dr. Robia Suratman, Dr. Nazira Hossein, and also Dr. Zainab Toin Jagun from Nigeria. So today I will present about the urban biodiversity management by highlighting a few approaches that can be carried out by the local authority in Malaysia. So there is a statement mentioned by Edward O. Wilson. He said that biodiversity is our most valuable but least appreciated resources because due to the urbanization process, a massive development hits the urban area continuously. So in order to conserve the urban biodiversity, especially the fauna species, the local authority need to have a proper management and a basic approach to be implemented into their management plan. So this study actually is suggested to be implemented in Malaysia, especially at local authority level, since Malaysia, their concern toward the biodiversity conservation are mostly in non-urban area. So this study is a suggestion for the Malaysia to be focused in urban area. Okay, what is meant by urban biodiversity? So actually, urban biodiversity is a variety of flora and fauna. We can find a lot of categories of taxonomy that can be found in the urban area. So this biodiversity not necessarily should be conserved in non-urban area and others natural area. So we have to focus the conservation of biodiversity in urban areas. So the objective of this study is to identify how the collaboration of different stakeholders help to conserve the fauna species in urban areas through the development of the urban biodiversity data system. So I will highlight two approaches of can be carried out by the local authority to manage their urban biodiversity. So the first approach is to develop an urban biodiversity data system, and also the second approach is the collaborations of other agencies and urban communities. So by developing urban biodiversity data system, this is actually help to identify the mobility of the fauna species in the urban areas. So we can identify the places that are visited by the fauna species, and those fauna usually they move here and there within the range of the place to find their food sources. For example, in the urban areas, we might have a few parks, recreation, that we have the rivers and plants, so that might be the focus place for the fauna species to gain their food sources. And also, the next one is we can identify the fauna species niche area. So this is important to increase the population of the fauna species in the urban area, because by identify the fauna niche area, the local authority can monitor and access the niche area to make sure it was not jeopardized by the factors around the urban areas. And also, some fauna are very picky, and not every green areas will be its niche area. So it is important if there are information related to any fauna background provided in the data system. Next one is a collaboration with other agencies and also the urban community, the local authority, private agency, and urban community. So the local authority and private agency should develop a data system for urban community use. So the application or a system should be of friendly use and easy to see and free, because this application will be used by the urban community. So the urban community is a target and the user for this application, because mostly the park and any recreation place, the visitor who came to the park is the urban community. Maybe they can be the one who provide the information, because some of them comprised of the one that who always go to jog around the parks. Maybe they can help to snap the picture of any fauna species, and maybe the others they might find the fauna species in other place to find the food sources. So this actually very useful to the local authority, because they can use the information provided by the urban community that will always be updated in the system. And as a conclusion, this is the summarized from overall literature and the input by the local authority and private agency. They will develop a urban biodiversity data system, and then the user will be the urban community. They will provide the information and any pictures or niche area provided into the data system. And for the output, the urban biodiversity data system can be a place for the local authority to monitor and assess. And therefore, at the end or the output, the action taken by local authority will based on the data system that they get it from the information by the urban communities. So I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love all the photos, beautiful photos of photos of beautiful birds.
Thank you.
This is a very interesting research area that you are looking at.
Yes.
And would you say that it's fairly new?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you just briefly tell me and share with us like the other research in this area that's currently available, like you would have done the literature review in this area, like I'm very interested in knowing how much like literature is actually out there. Like, is it a lot? Because it is given that it's a very new area.
Okay, actually, this is not a new issue, and this is already done by the the foreign countries, but not in Malaysia, because I just highlighted the basic approach that can be carried by the Malaysia to implement this urban biodiversity conservation into their management plan. So, I take a few example from the others country, and then I will implement this into a Malaysia scope.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very new in Malaysia.
Yes, because the Malaysia in Malaysia they are concerned only the biodiversity conservation at the non-area and the non-urban area and also the natural area. But in the urban area, there's still less lacking of effort to conserve the biodiversity.
Yeah. Would you be looking at why is there a lack of like interest in looking in the urban area in this research topic? Do you know? Like, would you be looking in this area?
Yes, can you repeat the question?
Like a lack of interest, like because mainly in Malaysia they focus in the non-urban area, right? When they look at this research area. So, but lack of interest. There is a lack of like not so much in the urban. Yeah.
Also, you mean by the lacking that Malaysia is having regarding to this issue?
Yeah.
So in Malaysia, I have studied about the policy and any acts that they establish, but most of them are concerned in the flora species in urban areas. But they didn't touch on how to manage and conserve the fauna species in urban areas. Because most of the acts and the policy they mention about how to manage the flora, the plants, and also the trees, but they did not have a special policies that highlight on the urban biodiversity in urban areas.
Right. Thank you very much. Is there any questions from the audience?
There is one question for me. Okay. Before I pose the question to you, I'd like you to watch BBC Earth, narrated by Sir David Attenborough on Singapore's very successful approach to maintaining their urban biodiversity through the preservation of the greenery, much like what is happening at Central Park, New York. Now, there were elements of quality of life, pollution, especially air pollution, and also the data that is stored with regards to animal extinction or non-extinction. So those are other variables that you should look at. There was also the aspects in Patagonia, Peru, where they make sure that the elephant seals population are maintained. So you can replicate that for what you're doing right now. And also, there is this attitude again in the rural area where they take biodiversity for granted. What is there. Whether you want to take care of it, no, not at all. Okay? So again, the element of attitude. Now, about your biodiversity, this is my question. The question is, did you look at environmental democracy for your research on biodiversity in urban areas?
Environmental democracy. Oh, I think this is a new information for me about the environmental democracy. Is it published by the Malaysia government? Oh yeah, okay. I think this is a new information. Maybe I will look through over the environmental democracy for my research study.
Okay. Any other questions? No questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So if we can move on to the next presentation, which is, we have the presenter here.
Yes. Good afternoon, Professor and other presenter.
Oh, Tao.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Professor and friends. My name is Thảo Hoàng, and I'm from Department of Urban Planning, National Cheng Kung University, Taiwan. It is my pleasure to be here and share my research with the topic research on industrial location criteria of planner for the case of Ho Chi Minh City. And my presentation will divide into 6 parts. At first, I will introduce a bit about Vietnam planning system. And as you know, Vietnam is a socialism country, and is a mainly a hierarchy top-down planning in Vietnam. And industrial park planning is the same. It's mostly planning projects under the controls of the government management. So for the planning process, it's mainly divided into 3 steps. Step 1 is the planning, is including the site selection, industrial park planning and designs. So after we have the design, we will make the appraisal by the competent authority, adjust the projects and get the final approval. Move to the step 2 is the implementation, is including the compensation and land acquisition, site clearance, and then after that it comes for investment. Final step is the industrial park operation management. And you can see here in the step 1, mostly under the manage and the involves of the planner. They have their own criteria to choose for the industrial park site. And the step 2, we come for investment from investor, and the investor they also have their own criteria to choose for the suitable industrial park to invest. So without the clarified industrial location criteria, it will create a gap between the planning expert and the investor. So by doing this research, I'm trying to clarify the industrial location criteria of planning expert and become the reference for the investor and evaluation process. And here is an example in Ho Chi Minh City, my case study. This is a strong project. This was done for more than 20 years in Ho Chi Minh City because because the gap between planner and investor it is hard to come for investor in to invest in the industrial park. So by doing this research, I'm trying to answer the question and trying to approach the treatment target. The target 1 is the systematic, the industrial location criteria. The target 2 is systematic, the industrial location criteria in Vietnam from the viewpoint of planning expert. And finally, is evaluate the priority of the criteria in selecting industrial park location. So after doing the literature reviews, I'm trying to make the systematic industrial park location criteria. It can divide into 5 main factors: the physical, economic, social, political, and environmental factor. And under this factor, we have divide into 2 more levels, either main criteria and sub-criteria. And this is the main criteria and sub-criteria belong each factor: the physical factor, economic factor, social factor, and political factor. Because of the rest of time, so I'm trying to briefly introduce and please follow the slides. So I established 7 steps of research process and trying to choose the suitable methodology to clarify to approach the results. They are the data collection, give interviews with the planning expert, case study analysis, and expert interview with comparison with the questionnaire survey for the data. And then I apply the fuzzy analytic hierarchy project FASP to evaluate the priority of the criteria in selecting industrial park planning location. My case study is the industrial park location in Ho Chi Minh City. You can see here the map of industrial park in Ho Chi Minh City. But the data collection will be aimed by applying the triangular fuzzy scales of FASP. And this is the results after analyze. I'm dividing into two main levels to make the pairwise comparison. At first, I will make the comparison between the main factor. They are the physical, environmental, economic, social, and political factor. And we can see in the table the result in the point of view of the investor, the physical factor and environmental factor play the most important roles. For the level 2, I make the pairwise comparison of each main criteria. With the physical factor, we can see the natural resource and transportation system play the most important role with the normalized over than 0.46 and 0.24. For the environmental factor, the environmental pollution is the most important criteria that the planner pay attention in. For the economic factor, they mostly care about the cost, its tech of each location and the economic environment. And in the social factor, mostly in the point of view of planner, they just care about the population, and other factor not really have the high normalized weight. And political factor, the tax it have the highest normalized is 0.6. The only factor and criteria mentioned above are calculated for normalized weights and the priority ranking. So this is the summaries of the results. We can see when the planner choose planning industrial projects, they will care about the physical factor, environmental factor. They trying to create a good environment and care more about the natural resource and trying to establish a good transportation system to minimize or trying to create a good environmental for attract the investor. And for the environmental factor, the most important factor is the environmental pollution. For economic factor, they care about the cost. Environmental, social is the population, and the political factor is the tax. By doing this research, have some conclusion and recommendations. Such say, I'm successful in generalize the industrial location criteria, and I also recognize that the industrial location are affected by the economic, political, environmental, cultural, social factor. So it's an unstable factor and it will change. It is needed to have an additional study in future for the up-to-date of the criteria. And this priority may differ from investor view, so it's needed to consider the role of investor while they doing the planning. This study also synthesizes the criteria, measure the weights, and the hierarchical stratification of the factor and criteria. So it's it is available for the application in the GIS to clarify location selection in an industrial park in the case. So by doing this research, I hope that I can have some contribution, like shorten the gap between the government decision and the investor decision, increase the industrial park planning project success, minimize the adverse impact caused by the failure of planning project, and become the foundation of planning approval evaluation. Consider the eliminate infeasible project, or become the force for more formal in-depth study on the criteria in the site selection of industrial zone in Vietnam. Thank you for your attention.
Beautiful timing. Thank you so much. What an interesting study.
Thank
Lots
you.
lots of numbers to consider there. Can I just ask you a quick question about how we go about valuing like measure social and environmental values? Do you
Uh,
have? Yeah.
like when I finalize uh, the factor. So this is just trying to clarify in the point of view of planner how much they care about that factor and is it important. Usually they will make the size survey and have the rank of the score for that kind of factor. They evaluate a lot of the issue. You can see here on the slide, we have two level of criteria. Like here for the social factor, I'm here just evaluate the main criteria, but when we make the size survey, we also giving the score for the sub criteria like the quality of life, average up to per housing room or residential housing. It will be the score for each sub criteria and main score for the main criteria. After that, including with the uh, these pet factor, they will have their own evaluation and conclusion.
Okay, thank you very much for that, because I think it's really, really hard to put a dollar sign on these social and environmental aspects. Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? It's a bit hard because we're not there, so I can't see. So, is there any questions from the audience? No. Yeah. Is there one? Does it mean there is no question?
Yeah.
How are you doing your PhD at the moment?
Yeah, I'm a PhD candidate of the
Good.
National
Very good.
University.
Very good. A very interesting research topic there. I have your slides here, so I just would be very, very interested to see, like you have these figures here, but again, because when one is looking at the, like you can look at environmental factors, economic factors, social factors. However, they are simply not the economic factors, but the environmental and socials. They simply, some of them are impossible for us to measure, to come up with the measurements. That's just a comment from me.
Yeah.
So if we don't have any other questions, thank you very much, Tao. Thank you for your presentation. We will move on to the next presentation.
It's been very pressuring to be second last presenters because everybody is looking at their watch for the, for the lunch. So I've given 10 minutes, I will finish in 3 minutes. Okay, all right, just to start off, my topic for the sharing session today is household refuse management behavior among urban residents. So if you look at the first diagram, you can see that in our house, right, we actually throw a lot of things. So when we have like increase in the number of people in our house, like children, you have your parents with you, so the number of refuse that you released is increased, right? So how do you manage that? Because at the end, if everybody throw and nobody manage, right? And you see that the statistics shows that the increase of the population will directly shows that the increase of the refuse that you have in your household will also increase. And this is creating pressures, right? We are not looking into how government is going to tap this, because this is our problem in the society. So our research is to look at how far we can have a model of how this refuse management system is going to be implemented in our home, in our own house, right? So therefore, we notice that if you don't conduct this study, our children will end up doing this, or swimming in the garbage, playing around with full of rubbish surrounding them, and this will lead to a very poor quality of life, right? So therefore, we have looked into a few literature reviews, and it shows that the number of population increase is related to the number of refuse, right? And it is reported that 90% of the disposed of landfill with no energy recovery system, so everything go, and nobody manage that. And we do not know how far the household is ready to manage their own refuse item, right? Even a simple step of having a recycle, right, a few basket, that one is also a really difficult thing for us to do, right? In my area, because I'm staying in Nilai, we actually have a practice of a few baskets. So I noticed that my house now turned to a big trash and garbage, because if the recycle item man did not come and collect all these things, right, it will be there. And a normal trash collector, they won't collect all these things. Even if you put a box, they won't collect. It will be there for at least 1 week or 2 weeks until the recycle lorry will come and pick up. So this is actually creating a problem. Not only it's really demotivating to the household to actually look into how they can manage their own refuse, right? So therefore, the main objective of this study is to examine factors that affect the efficiency of household refuse management system. So we're going to look at how the individual in the household, like you yourself, you can actually, what is the thing that you can do? What are the factors that, actually can build up an efficient household refuse management system? Because we believe that if you have a good model that can reflect each household can manage their own refuse, it will be very good. At least this is one simple step to help to reduce the burden of the government. We don't want to talk about what the government can do, because we are the society. Therefore, our research actually focus on what the society can do as a society who deal with, all these things every day. You do groceries, you go eat and out, you bring all the plastic bag and all those. How do you manage your own refuse? And another objective is to determine significant relationship between the factors towards the efficiency. So this is more on testing on what are factors affecting and most significant. And also the third thing, to propose a solution model. So we want to look at what are the model that we can implement in the household, right, to make sure that at least our refuse is being managed in a micro level. So this is a literature review, summarizing that there's a lot of research being done on a few factors, and therefore, if you keep on reading journals, to look at refuse and all those things, these are some of the critical factors that people say if you look into this factor, it can at least improve the urban household refuse management system, right? So we have here technology, social structures, and right, so this is our research framework. We look into 4 factors: technology, regions, social structures, and also the behavior of the household itself, to look into how the efficient or refuse management system is going to be formulated. So there are 4 hypotheses that were tested in this study. The first one is a relationship between technology. So we want to look at whether technology play a role in the management of our own household. So we actually look into, if you go through your app store, there's a lot of apps, recycle apps that you can download and all those things. But how far people in the urban area actually use the apps, utilize the app? People are so scared, because now, even if you download the apps, right, the first thing is you have to give your data. So if you give your data, the next thing you know, people blast email, spam, and all those things. So people are not really, the trust of us using the apps that we download from the store. That is one of the things that is very, very difficult. Right? Even if you're in urban area where connectivity, internet, Wi-Fi is not a problem, but this is some skeptical thing about technology. people, we have that, but we are still having a problems of the trust. And then we look into social structures, relationship between religious, and also some household behavior itself. All right, so these are some the methodology. All right, this research actually focus on quantitative approach, right? And we actually use a set of questionnaire. We interview around 505 respondents through links, right? We created an online survey, and we blast this questionnaire through the residential area in Kuala Lumpur urban centers, right? Through their residential committees, right? And the data was analyzed using SPSS. So this is the analysis of the findings for the technology on the mean score, right? We look at technology on the, and one of the questions we ask is that using technology will enable me to easily treat the garbage. So we want to look at the urban population when they use technology, what is their reaction, right? So we found that in urban area, not so much of a problem. Maybe the extension of research should be in rural area as well. That is the limitation. So now we just focus on urban. So maybe urban area, they have smartphone, they have connections of internet, no problem for them. So to them, it's not a problem, right? And then we have a
2 minutes to go.
2 minutes.
Sorry.
Okay, this is the analysis of behavior, and then we do analysis of social structures and religious, right? And also to look at, to formulate a model, we actually run a regressions, and it shows that 25% of all the IV stated is actually creating some impact to the DV, that is how efficient you can manage your household, right? And out of 3, 1 is rejected, that is social structures, because now social structures, we look at where the geographic, right? In urban area, I think not so much of problem, because maybe they say their collections is good, you know, they have all these infrastructures is there, all right? So it is rejected in terms of the, after we run the regression analysis, this is not supported. So the discussion is, there are some literature who support our hypothesis, and some say is the other way around. So to me, is either you support or don't support, is actually looking into the scenario where you conduct the study, right? So maybe in the area where we conduct the study is urban area, not so much of problem, right? And if we, let's say in future, we want to extend to rural area, there might be some differences in terms of the result. So we can do further comparison on that. So that will be future. So as a conclusion, we already know what are the factors affecting the efficient usage or efficient refuse management for the household. So at the government level, what we can do is we can tap on all these factors and try to transform all these things into tools that can help each of the household to manage their own refuse. So with that, I end my presentation. Did I meet 10 minutes?
Yes, just you made it. 10 minutes. Well done. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I promised 3 minutes.
You promised 2, and I thought no, even 2 hours we would we will still have a very good conversation on this topic here, because it's so important. The topic itself is very important, and thank you for the presentation. Now I'm going to just open this to the floor, and if you have anyone has any question, because we're really running very behind here with time.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Chairperson, and hi also, Doctor. Okay, my name is Mahazril. Actually, I agree with you when you mentioned about this is not the government problem. This is the society problem, where it becomes our behavior, where we refuse to manage our own household resources. Okay, and you mentioned just now about come up with the model, right? Model solutions, right?
Yes.
So may I know more on what kind of the model, model solutions that you propose for this study? And you mentioned about based on the regression analysis, so it shows that these are the factors
Yes.
About technology, about the social structure, about the behavior of the household. So I believe when your finding found that there is a relationship between behavior and also the efficiency of the managing the household waste. So how do what do you think your solutions can improve or can create the awareness among the community to maybe to change our behavior because I think technology, social structure, we can see that is there is a relationship. But I think among all these factors, behavior is one of the most significant factors that contributes to the efficiency.
True.
All right. So how do you see this? Because just now Doctor mentions about solutions models. So I'm very interested to know what kind of the solution model that you propose in your study.
Thank you so much. Okay, what is the model that government should look into? The first thing is, okay, I just give you one example, that is technology. So maybe we look at the first model, how technology, and we already run the test and we know technology actually give a positive or significant relationship to the efficient on how you actually manage. So we know that technology play a role. So the first thing government should do is how we relate to the society means giving them education, because all the planning start with education, awareness systems on how each of the household can actually do things and use technology. Okay, we have this technology and we've been working on that, on how to collect our trash using apps. So maybe this could be one small platform that government could do to create awareness to the urban area population to come up. We already have the apps, it's just that we have to encourage them to use the app. That's why I say it relates to the education. So from the behavior, we know that if you change the behavior, right? How do we change the behavior? Is through the education. We don't have other platform. Even in Singapore, right, we see from small children, when we talk about policy, in here, transportation policy, because I'm transportation and logistic background, transport policy, you have to read this thick textbook. But in Singapore, right, they transform into comics. That is one platform of how they transform the most important things to develop a country into a very, very interesting that small children can just pick up and read. So that's why I say it comes through the education. That's how behavior can be shaped. All right, so I hope I answer your question.
You need further details, see me lunchtime. Okay.
I totally agree with your response there. I like that answer because your example that you use is very good. Like I mean, in Singapore,
Yes.
you know, like in here, so in Australia, everything is not like it's not through just textbook or in class, but it's practical.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Oh, we have one.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Thank you.
Feedback. I think I echo with whatever Dr. has said, especially when we talk about behavior and attitude or environmental. The issues of trust and culture plays an important role.
True.
Those are two things that hit us, especially when we do SDG, why people cannot contribute and participate because of that issue rather than,
True.
Rather than any other factors.
Yeah, you are very, very true. We are looking into like urban planners, right? We one thing we want to look at how people want to shift from private transport to public transport. That is behavior. Right? That's why I say it start with the education. You know, because I work in Johor before. You know, when you work in Johor, the tendency of you to get the Singapore channel is very, very high. So every time, you know, the advertisement comes in, you know, they will say, they will encourage, or the advertisement will be, let's ride on LRT, let's ride on bus. But in Malaysia, right, you hardly can see that people make an advertisement, let's ride on LRT, let's ride on buses. So that's why I say it start with education. It will shape the behavior of people. Right? I hope I answer your, not answer, but it's a good discussion.
No, actually, how to make
public response to whatever the draft you or maybe the government open up.
Okay.
Right? Of course, you want to educate something like that because actually this is the whole. For example, actually I can see two things. One is heavy penalty. For example, if you don't do that,
yes,
you penalize. So another thing is if total appreciation. For example, okay, we buy the trash. I think this has been done.
Yes.
But again, when there is not maybe the other area for you to venture in or
yes.
Okay, I think that's the.
Okay, back to the question on how do you receive the response from the society, right? Uh, in every planning, I believe that we have education, we have engineering, we have enforcement. Enforcement comes last. First you have to educate. So after you give the educations, then you start to do all the infrastructures, mean the engineering. But now in Malaysia, the engineering is all there. Education is missing and enforcement is missing. So if you want the public to respond, you have to start enforce, meaning you start saying that in this residential area, especially urban area, you must use this app to dispose your refuse. Then only everybody will start download and use all these things. And it has to be like constantly reminding people about the apps. And it has to come through advertisement. That is education. Because people don't trust all the apps that they can just download because sometimes it's a scam. They just need to get your data and they use other things. So this is, I really hope that I can respond. That is the response that you are hoping for. If not, means later we can discuss and debate in the lunch hall.
Yeah, our time is up.
Yes, thank you.
So, if we have any question, we can always email you or
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Now we move on to our very last presentation, which is by Dr. Wan Nurul Muhammad Rani. And when you're ready.
Starting April. So I believe that everybody would want to understand how we would go living with the pandemic. Okay, with the COVID-19 basically. So the topic is walkable environment, building resilient and healthy cities post-pandemic. So, all right, the presentation is basically, I would first give an overall introduction, okay, and then here I would like to highlight the objective of the study, which is basically to explore the walking behavior and the mobility pattern of urban populations in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and to assess how the walkable environment that we have mainly in Malaysian cities, on how the walkable environment have contributed to the compliance of the 3Cs in our daily lives. So basically, I will explain the methodology and then the study area for this project, and also highlight some findings and discussion and also conclusion. I hope I will get all completed before 2 o'clock. Okay, so all right. So basically, we all understand the impact of COVID-19 pandemic because we've been going on living with this COVID-19 since late 2019. So basically, this is sort of the how COVID-19 impacted cities. So this diagram shows that it has impacted all part of our lives, and basically, the COVID-19 has significantly changed the way we live, and also changed the way we interact with each other, our social activities, and others. So it has forced us all to take precautionary measures to reduce the spread of the virus, mainly by limiting the social contact, traveling, and whatnot. So overall, it impacted the social, our air quality, as we can see that there's a quite significant reduction in logistic, in transport, and other urban activities. Of course, environmental factors, water resources, urban design, transport, smart cities, as we need to have advancement in big data in moving forward with coping with the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the governance, urban system, and as well as the economic impacts. Okay, so basically, all right, based on the reports in the news, in the previous studies during the pandemic, basically there's a high number of suicidal rates. Okay, I mean, sorry, a reduction in the suicidal rates till March 2021, and then the number of confirmed cases in daily in Malaysia from 2020 until 2021. All right, and also we can also see the number of registered vehicles in Malaysia. However, despite the limited, I mean, the movement control order, the registered vehicles keep on increasing. Okay, it's quite surprising because even though we do not travel much, people still look into the ownership of vehicles. Okay, so here this is some sort of diagram on how we can look into understanding the relationship between walkable environment and healthy cities. So here, based on the Bobet author in 2021, walking basically aimed towards creating a healthier community due to its low intensity physical activities suitable for all ages. And Sanusi also in 2021 mentioned that the walkable environment, especially at the outdoor areas, the urban spaces, public spaces, is very important to achieve quality of life in this pandemic era. And also, Kato Matsushita and also Noro in 2019 mentioned that by having a walkable environment and by having awareness on health awareness, it would change the community behaviors towards a better quality of life, and also mainly to achieve active lifestyle. Okay, so in the study, basically the methodology adopted is a mixed method approach, where we conducted mainly the responses reported in this paper is based on online questionnaire survey, and the analysis technique is descriptive, and then a little bit on the statistical analysis. However, on top of this, we also conducted observation, meaning field work, to some selected areas to see how the urban settings are during the pandemic, and we see how the people behave in the cities during the pandemic, especially within the areas of walkable environment. So basically, this is the study area that we went to do some observation. The River of Life Precinct near the along the river, Sungai Kelang, Sungai Gombak River, and then the Choket Precinct, the Botani Precinct, and then the Kampung Atap. Some part of the civic areas, the Kampung Baru, where it focuses on the heritage and culture activities. KLCC office area, and then Bukit Bintang Precinct, the commercial areas, and also the Pudu Precinct, which is more focusing on the retail and also the local street market. Okay, so basically on the findings and discussion, we will look into 5 aspects, which socio-demographic profile, and also the health status, mobility pattern, walking behavior pattern, and then how the walking behavior within the neighborhood areas and around the areas under study just now during the pandemic COVID-19, and also how, I mean, their aspirations on, as well as on how the walkable environments have contributed to the compliance of the 3 Cs. Okay, so first of all, here is what has been reported in the survey. So basically, 55% of the respondents were male, and the age between 35 to 44 of age, approximately 43%. And then 52% of them were non-essential workers. And then majority of them responded are having household between 3 to 5, and 50% of them were reported to live in urban areas, and well, around 45%, okay, were reported to have very rare frequency of getting sick, which is 2 to 4 times a year, and 43% were reported to have adopted walking as their healthy lifestyle. And
2
here,
minutes to go.
when dealing with chronic disease, a high number of 85% reported so. Okay, so next we look into the mobility pattern. Okay, so basically, as we see for the first finding here, for work-related traveling or mobility pattern, it shows that before and after, it there is a significant reduction of work-related. As we can see in here, before the pandemic, 50% were for the purpose of work-related, and during the pandemic, it was reported only at 2%. Okay, and whereas for shopping, also there's quite not not as significant as work-related. Okay, and it shows quite the same for leisure and recreational. And then, as you can see, for social purposes, which is visiting family and friends, before were 38% reported more often, and whereas during the pandemic, it was reported to be at 0%. So
With
that
1 minute
is
to go. 1
again.
minute.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. So here, there is quite a significant change before and also during the pandemic. So here, it shows some walking behavior patterns. All right. Okay. And then this is about walking in neighborhood areas, because since we do not have the leisure to go beyond the neighborhood areas during the pandemic, so the public were limited to only within the neighborhood areas. So here it was reported that within the neighborhood, 33% reported they spent walking around 2 to 3 times per week. So this is quite a positive number, basically. And then here, basically, factors that encourage walking is shows that 38% agree that it allows social distancing, and then the number, the next was presence of natural and green environment plays a very significant role in encouraging people to walk. And of course, the weather, since Malaysia is a hot and humid country, so the weather plays quite a significant role, and people would usually walk early in the morning and later in the late afternoon. Okay, factors that prevented walking. Okay, so basically, crowded was reported to be the highest reason for preventing to walk. All right, and then the next is weather is too hot again. So basically, once we have the greeneries around, natural environment, cooling effects from the trees, it would encourage more people to walk. So basically, the aspiration for better walking environment in the neighborhood area. So it shows that most of them agree that better pedestrian path connectivity is very important. And the next would be we need to provide more recreational space, parks, and public places. So this is eventually um, what we expected to get, actually, because we understand that as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, the stresses from it, so people would want to have better quality of life, better environment for them to just have a better experience within their neighborhood, and it would eventually, facilitate the policy in terms of making the neighborhood areas more convenient and also more pleasant to live in. So here, basically, this is the conclusion. So here we succeeded to convince that walking in the residential neighborhood areas seemed to be well practiced by the respondents, with more than 70% were reported to do so for at least once in a week. And the respondents' aspirations for a better walking environment, mostly they would feel that having green surrounding, better pedestrian path, and then having a high level of walking environment would lead to a better quality of life. So I think that's my conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open this to the audience. Do we have any questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. To me, it's quite a new topic, new research area. Given that your research was surrounded what happened in the past 2 years. So anyone, please, if there's any question.
Most of them are out for lunch, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I think there's a photo session as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I just love the topic. I just love your research. And I like the title of a walkable city. I don't have any question in the particular, like specific question for you. And so no questions from the audience? Can I take that as a no? If we do not have any... there is one.
Oh, he just came back from lunch, I suppose.
Oh, okay. So if there's no questions, that concludes our session. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I absolutely enjoyed the time and the papers. So I hope to see you again next time. Please go enjoy your lunch. I'm so sorry for the the delay, but because we had that issue with technical issues at the beginning. So thank you all, and thank you very much, colleague.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Experienced in my life and the beginning of what would become a series.
Thank you, Professor. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everybody enjoy your lunch or breakfast or dinner, or I don't know.